Hello, everyone, and welcome to Registrar Corp's webinar entitled 3 Ways to Protect Your Brand with Facility 360. My name is Jonathan Rhodes, a member of Registrar Corp's product development team and today's presenter. This presentation will conclude with a live questions and answers session. If we run out of time, we are happy to respond to your questions by email at info@registrarcorp.com. You may submit a written question at any time during the webinar by using the Ask a Question feature in the top center of your webinar screen. A recorded copy of this presentation will be sent to all registrants. I'd like to go ahead and begin. On today's agenda, we'd like to address 5 topics. And so the first topic we are going to discuss is Registrar Corp's patent pending risk evaluation tool called Regis Score. We are going to discuss how Facility 360 can help you minimize detentions of your shipments in the future, and also how to protect your brand from unauthorized or suspicious shipments. We are then going to do a demo of our new tool, Facility 360, within the FDA Compliance Monitor, and we will conclude with a questions and answers session. So our first topic is our patent pending facility risk evaluation tool, Regis Score. And so Regis Score calculates the risk that your facility may present to a buyer, and this is based on your facility's FDA compliance and your shipment history. So what we've done is we take 5 years of data surrounding your shipments to the United States provided by FDA, and we also monitor your history of FDA inspections, warning letters, import alerts, and recalls. And we run that information through a proprietary algorithm that evaluates your facility based on the severity of these events and how recently they occurred. So RegiScore is a score that is on a 0 to 100 scale, meaning that a high score presents a low risk for a U.S. importer, where a low score presents a high risk for a U.S. importer. So your U.S. importer may use RegiScore to gauge the risk of buying from your company. They may also use it as kind of a broad assessment of your risk when they are doing things such as their foreign supplier verification program, which they are required to do under the Food Safety Modernization Act. A high score, so as you can see on the bottom right-hand side of the screen, I have a score of 95, which is considered very low risk. And this is a great thing to incorporate in your marketing to just kind of give some extra assurance to prospective buyers or to your importers in general that your facility is compliant with FDA regulations and you have very few, if not any, problems when shipping to the United States. Next, I want to talk about how our Facility 360 tool within the FDA Compliance Monitor can help you minimize detentions. So RegiScore is a part of Facility 360, but this application in general monitors these data points that are calculated into RegiScore and can help you do other things for your brand as well. So as I had mentioned before with RegiScore, you can monitor your facility for FDA inspections, warning letters, import alerts, import refusals, and recalls. And when we go into the demo, I will explain a bit more about what those things mean. But for now, just know that we can monitor any FDA-regulated facility for that information. And when FDA publishes new information concerning those data points, you will receive an email alert if you subscribe to the Facility 360 service. This information, when you receive these email alerts, is useful in helping you take corrective action to mitigate detentions and other compliance issues that might occur in the future. For example, if your facility is placed under import alert, that means that any shipments that you send to the United States in the future will be detained without physical examination for any of the products that are under import alert. And so FDA does not notify a facility directly if they're placed under import alert. So the facility may be placed under import alert, and they may have no knowledge that that happens. And one of the things I'm going to talk about in a bit is that FDA may attribute shipments to your company name without your knowledge, and those products could be placed under import alert, which could cause some detentions and delays that you would want to take corrective action against. Another way that this helps minimize the tensions is very, very soon, beginning October 1st, 2020, FDA registered facilities must renew their FDA registrations. And this is between October 1st and December 31st of this year. A failure to properly renew your FDA registration will result in a canceled registration by FDA. So what FDA will do is, after the registration renewal period is over, they will go into their database and they will cancel any registrations that weren't properly renewed during that renewal period. And so you may have had a FDA registration that you believed was valid, and for that reason, it could go invalid. It could also go invalid for other reasons, such as a duplicate registration being created under the same address for a company. And so FDA detains shipments that come from facilities that do not have a valid FDA registration number. So below, I just have an example. This is not real contact information, of course. This is just some fake contact information for Registrar Corp. But this is to illustrate part of our tool, which allows you to keep an eye on your DUNS number, as well as your FDA registration number. So if you submit your FDA registration number to us in our tool in Facility 360, we will use the information you provide to consistently validate that registration and check to see whether it is still valid. And so if that registration were to switch from a valid to an invalid status, you would receive an email alert indicating that change. And so that can help you quickly re-register your facility if necessary, before you ship, so that you don't encounter these potential issues when your products try to arrive in the port. Next, I want to talk about how Facility 360 can protect your brand from unauthorized shipments. So as I said before, or kind of hinted at before, products that you sell outside of the United States may be resold and shipped to the US without your knowledge. And this is a practice known as gray marketing, typically. I know there are some other terms for it elsewhere in the world. We typically know it as gray marketing. But this is when somebody exports your product or a product that's associated with your facility to the United States or to anywhere without your knowledge. And so, for example, if you have a product that's maybe labeled only for use within a country in the European Union, or only for use in Japan, or a very specific market, and then that gets purchased in that market and then shipped to the United States, it may not be compliant with the requirements set by the FDA. And so FDA may look at that shipment and they may refuse the shipment. They may place the products from your facility concerned in that shipment under import alert, which, as I said before, FDA does not notify you whether you're under import alert. So these unauthorized shipments or suspicious shipments can be a potential problem that can cause some compliance issues in the future. And so we have developed a part of Facility 360 that allows you to monitor your shipments to the US that are attributed to your company name by FDA. So a customs broker or some other type of filer files an entry with FDA, and your company name may be associated with that. If that's published in FDA's system, we're able to pick up on that and associate it with your company. So before we go into questions and answers, of course, I want to walk you through our tool. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly share my screen, and I'm just going to take a few steps here to kind of give you an idea of where Facility 360 lives, and if you choose to join this service, where you could access it. So Facility 360 is actually part of Registrar Corp's compliance platform, myfda.com. And so myFDA allows you to manage your registration, allows you to file prior notice, and all sorts of interesting compliance features, as well as this tool called the FDA Compliance Monitor, which Facility 360 lives inside of. So I have an account that's logged in here, and this is kind of the home view of my FDA. And Facility 360 lives within this FDA Compliance Monitor tile. I have an account that's preloaded, and this is the first thing you would see when you log into the FDA Compliance Monitor. So we have a very, very basic overview from the beginning of the facility. So we have the facility's name, the country it's located in, and then some address information. If I click on Show More, I can see some contact information for the facility, as well as the facility's DUNS number that we have on file. And then there's the feature to monitor the FDA registration. So as I said, if you're a food facility, you can provide your FDA registration to us. And when you provide that information, the FDA registration number and PIN, we will then verify the validity of that registration and continuously monitor it for you. So it's not this one-time verification, it's a continuous monitoring of your FDA registration number. Over to the right, we have RegiScore, as we discussed earlier. And so you can see this facility is set at a medium risk score. And so if I want to find out more details about the RegiScore, I can either click on the number or I can click this See Breakdown button, which will load my RegiScore information. And similar to, I'm not sure, how familiar credit scores are internationally, but here in the United States, we of course have our credit scores. And this is a similar concept. Usually you can see a breakdown of things that influence your score. And so here, this facility we see had 98% of its shipments to the US entered without issues. And so that does have a high positive impact on the score. 2% of its shipments were detained or refused, which has a low negative impact on the score. And then it had a VAI inspection in the past 5 years. And I'll go a little bit more in detail about what a VAI inspection means. But a VAI inspection typically means that FDA found something that was objectionable in the facility when they went to inspect it. You can also see that this facility is under 5 active import alerts, and so that has a negative medium impact on the score, and that helps us derive this score of a 76. So the things that are considered here are the severity of all of these events that occur. So all of these things kind of have different weights attributed to them that we've assigned a mathematical weight to, and then we use that in conjunction with how recently these events occurred. So how recently did these shipments occur? How recently did this inspection occur? And that's what's used to derive this single RegiScore. My browser's reloading, and I'm going to go ahead and pull that facility back up. And so we use this information to derive your RegiScore, and we're only considering the past 5 years of a facility's activity. And the reason for this is that we want to be sure that the RegiScore is fair and that it's attributing risk information based off of recent events. So a facility that has frequent shipments more recently, for example, in the year 2020, or even in the year 2019, if they had no problems with their shipments, they may have a higher score than a facility that has shipped consistently at 100%, no problems, but hasn't shipped since the year 2016. So recency of the events plays a very, very large factor in determining this score. We also have a list of individual products for these scores, and these are based off of FDA product codes. So I can actually look and see which products I have better or worse scores for. For example, if I wanted to see my score for herbals and botanicals, I did have 2 very recent shipments of this in the last 5 years, and 100% of them had no issues when they entered. So for my herbals and botanicals, I actually have a score of 100, whereas for my shiitake mushrooms, I haven't shipped since 2015. So even though 100% of those enter without issues, it doesn't have as much of an impact in bringing my score up. So I may not have a high enough score there because I haven't shipped those in a long time. Likewise, there's this history tab over here, and that allows me to view the history of my RegiScore over time. So I could see that in April we were at a 75, and in August we're at a 76. And then I can also look at the individual histories for certain product scores. So I have a logged score here for my radishes, and this data is fairly new, it seems. So that is the basic overview of the RegiScore and how that score is kind of determined. Next, I want to talk about the FDA compliance data. And I had mentioned that this may help you minimize detentions by being able to notify you when there are things you need to take corrective action on. So within Facility 360, you're able to monitor your facility for any FDA inspections, warning letters, import alerts, import refusals, and recalls. And I'm just going to walk through each of these and just kind of explain what they mean. So as I had mentioned before, an inspection classification, there are 3 different types of FDA inspection classifications. The first one is a no action indicated, and that is what's called an NAI inspection, a no action indicated, meaning that FDA went into the facility and they did not find anything objectionable, or whatever they found that may be objectionable was so minuscule that they decided it was not worth taking action on. Then they have a voluntary action indicated, which means that there were objectionable conditions found at the facility, but that the facility should take action on, but there's no requirement directly for them to take action on it. It's voluntary. So it wasn't an official stance by FDA saying that the facility needs to take action on this. If a facility is issued a voluntary action indicated and FDA comes back to the facility at a later point and finds that those conditions were not corrected, they may then decide that the violation is serious enough to issue what's called an official action indicated inspection. And so an official action indicated means that there were objectionable conditions and FDA deemed them serious enough that the facility is required to take action on them. And so an official action indicated typically means serious business, as opposed to a voluntary action indicated, which is something to worry about, certainly, and something that should be corrected, but not as serious. A FDA warning letter, and thankfully this facility does not have any, is a letter that would be addressed directly to a facility in question. And this is when FDA notices a pattern of noncompliance or something that's just very, very, very serious that needs to be corrected at the facility. So FDA will send a letter to the facility and issue exactly what the facility is in violation against and the corrective actions that need to be made. If a facility receives a warning letter from FDA, this is very serious business, and you likely do not want this to happen to your facility. Uh, Next, we're going to talk about import alerts, which of course, I mentioned. If a product is placed under import alert, the shipments of that product to the United States are detained without physical examination by FDA. So they're detained automatically. And so this facility, you can see, is under active import alerts for 3 products, but they also have these 2 that are exempt. And so what this exempt means is they actually petitioned to be removed from what's known as a countrywide import alert. So below we have this statement about products from China. So dried preserved fruits, dates, melon seeds, and dried fungus from China. Those are automatically placed under import alert, meaning anything from China that fits that product category will be detained without physical examination. However, the facility, if they want to market those products in the US without those products being detained automatically, can petition for removal from that import alert in addition to this green list. And so petition generally involves sending over at least 5 non-violative shipments of the product into the United States. It may be more depending on the nature of the import alert, and providing a host of other information to be exempted. So if a company is exempt from an import alert, if they're on a green list for something, that means that generally for that product, they should be more or less okay because they have demonstrated to FDA that that product is in compliance. And then, of course, we have import refusals. So import refusals, as implied by the name, these are shipments that were sent to the US and FDA detained them, examined them, and decided that they should not enter the US. They refused entry into the United States. And so this company, we can see, had 2 within the last 5 years. They had 2 in 2017, but then the remainder of those date back to 2014 and 2013, which would not be calculated into this facility's Regis Score. Only these shipments would affect the facility's Regis Score. And then lastly, we can monitor for recalls. So FDA will generally receive recalls from a company. In the food industry, these are typically voluntary. FDA does have the authority to mandate a recall of a product based on the severity of a violative condition that it finds. However, there have been very few cases where FDA has mandatorily issued a recall order to a food facility. That does happen a bit more often in the drug and medical device markets. But a recall in Facility 360 essentially means that FDA was issued this recall by the facility, and you can monitor the status of the recall and the class of the recall. So FDA classifies the recalls based on their severity as well. And so, as I had mentioned, anytime any of this information is to change, say that I had an FDA inspection tomorrow, once FDA publishes that what's called a Form 483, that inspection classification, you will see it within this Facility 360 account. And you will also receive an email alert that points you to your Facility 360 account so you can see that this change occurred. Next, I want to talk about, as I mentioned in my 3rd slide earlier, I had Facility 360 can help you identify problematic products or suspicious or unauthorized shipments to the United States. So within Facility 360, we have this Shipments tab that is an add-on feature, and this allows you to monitor shipments sent to the US under your company's name. So in the case of the gray marketer, if a person or a company ships my product to the United States without my knowledge, it may be attributed to me, and that information is accessible within here. But also, of course, shipments that you sent yourself to the United States would be accessible in here. So From a high-level view, we have a breakdown of the shipments by status. So I can see that there were 723 shipments over a 5-year period, which lines up with the sorts of things that we take into consideration when calculating Regis Score. 708 of these shipments were cleared with no issues, 13 of which were detained by FDA and released at a later point. And then 2 of these were refused. And those are those 2 refusals from 2017 that I showed you earlier. On the left-hand side, I can see this nice pie chart of my breakdown of my products. So I can actually see which products I ship more than others. For example, I have 48% are my whole button shiitake mushrooms. And then after that, I have my 17% of cloud ear black fungus. And so I can see a really nice overview of the proportion of my products that are shipped to the US relative to all of my other products. Likewise, I can see a proportion of my shipments that were cleared with no issues relative to my shipments that were detained. So you can see, even though it's a little small, in a few quarters here, there are these small yellow lines that indicate that I had some problematic shipments there. And then, of course, I had my 2 refused shipments in Q4 of 2017. If I want to see those problematic shipments in proportion to each other a bit more clearly, and simply click on this cleared, and that will filter out the cleared shipments to see a more detailed breakdown of that. Thankfully, this company does not have a lot of detained shipments or refused shipments, but this is helpful for kind of seeing how these are dispersed along this time frame. And this is important because you may not know that your shipments are detained, or you may not know that your shipments are refused. FDA is not always volunteering this information, depending on who filed the entry or who the importer is. It may go through several different points of communication, and it may never reach you. So it's important to be able to see kind of where you're having issues and when, so you can identify problems and patterns of problems that you could take corrective action on. And then, of course, down below, we have a table of all of your shipments to the United States within that 5-year period that are considered here. And so these give you a detailed view. So I can actually see the individual entries by the FDA entry number, which is a unique identifier for the shipment entry filed with FDA. I can see when the shipment arrived. This is a sortable column. So I can actually go back to my oldest shipments versus my newest shipments. And then I can look at my FDA action, which is whether it was cleared, detained, or refused. And I can also sort by that as well to get the shipments that are problematic right up to the top and see, what are the things I'm having issues with the most. Am I having issues with a particular product code in general, or around a specific time frame? I can also see the product code of the shipment, of course, and this is a standardized value that is kind of maintained by FDA, and it corresponds to this product description that FDA understands this product code to belong to. So a filer, typically a customs broker, will enter this product code, and that means that this product code means that I shipped mixed vegetables, dried or paste, NEC, to the United States. And then, of course, in the last column, I have the filer of my shipment. And if I hover over the filer, I can see the address information, the location of that filer. So this is important in the sense that if there's a shipment that might not seem familiar, might seem like you did not ship it, the filer would be someone who has knowledge of the shipment and may be a good place to contact if you have questions or you're not sure of a shipment that was sent to the US under your company's name. And so with all of this in mind, your Facility 360 profile is meant to protect your reputation and protect your brand in those three ways I mentioned before. You have the Regis Score that helps give you a high-level overview of your facility's compliance and can also be incorporated in your marketing if it's high and you want to incorporate that. You have your FDA Compliance Data, which can notify you when things change and when things that you may not know about happen involving your facility, so you can take corrective action, as well as your shipment data, so you can have validation that your shipments are going through just fine, or you can identify shipments that you do not recognize. And so Facility 360 is available for a very low price of $390 per year per facility, and that is accessible within a MyFDA account. If you're interested in learning more about Facility 360, or you want to see your RegiScore for free, the value of your RegiScore for free, after this webinar, I will send you a link to a short survey form, and you can just check Facility 360, and we can create an account for you to see your RegiScore for free. So that being said, I would now like to switch over to my questions and answer session, and just for a very brief moment, I am just switching over to my presentation. And so our first question, what guarantees do you provide that data are accurate and provided in a timely manner? This is a great question. So we have a host of processes and protocols that are both automated and human driven. So for example, we are looking for changes automatically through various protocols that we have and various processes, but we are also having teams go in and verify the consistency of this information daily. We have teams that are consistently looking to make sure that information about your facility specifically matches up with the information that we show to you, because FDA may publish information about your facility in several different places, and it might be a little difficult to discover information about your specific location if FDA publishes different information in 5 different databases, and each of those databases might use a different company name, or it might use your trade name, etc. So we have a lot of processes that are involved in researching the data and ensuring its consistency throughout. This is a great question. Our next question, how do I improve my RegiScore if my RegiScore is not what I want it to be? And this is another great question. So as I mentioned earlier, a RegiScore is dependent on recent shipments and your compliance events. So for example, a company that has shipped many times in recent years and did not have any compliance issues with those shipments may have a higher score than a company that shipped, the last time they shipped was in 2015 and they had no problems. Likewise, a company that had a lot of recent shipments that were maybe bad may have a lower score than a company that had shipments in the past that were bad. So if there are problems that are actually negatively impacting a RegiScore, RegiScore only considers 5 years worth of data. So essentially, the influence to this score will decrease as time goes on until it eventually will not affect the score after 5 years. So if a facility is under an import alert and they put in the work to be petitioned for removal from import alert, and then they're removed from the import alert, that import alert may still negatively affect them at a decreased value. However, as time goes on, its influence over their score will decrease. And so our next question, which is a great question, is the score refreshed every 5 years? So our score is refreshed very, very frequently, at least twice a month. We run regular checks. And as I mentioned before, I'm not super familiar how international the idea of a credit score is. But in the United States, we have credit scores that assess our risk to lend to, and those are refreshed typically twice a month, which we kind of take a similar approach with Regis Score as we get multiple pieces of data from various sources that can potentially contribute to that score. Our next question is also a great question. What is the frequency we can ask for this report, or how many times a year do you recommend we ask for it? So the great thing about Facility 360 is that it's not a one-time report. For a low annual fee, you can subscribe to this information where if anything changes related to the compliance of your facility, you'll receive the email alert, and you can access this information at any time you want to within this system. You can also access your Regis Score at any time. So it's not based on the frequency. It's based on when is FDA publishing information that's related to your facility, and at any point that can change, and you can access it. Our next question: who is the filer of the shipment? And so this is a great question. It might not be super familiar to a lot of people, but the filer is a person or a company who filed a shipment entry with FDA. And so this is typically a customs broker who has knowledge of the shipment. Our next question: does this work for pharmaceutical companies as well as food companies? And the short answer is yes. Facility 360 allows you to monitor the FDA compliance of any FDA regulated facility. So Registrar Corp, we maintain this very, very large data set of any FDA regulated company. And so if your products are regulated by FDA, we can monitor your compliance. And so while this has a lot of advantages for food companies, it also can be considered valuable to medical device and drug companies as well. Our next question: what is a bad score, and what happens if I have a bad score? So RegiScore, just to reiterate, is a score that Registrar Corp has developed based off of our proprietary technology. And what we're doing is we are creating a meaning out of all of these compliance events that is easily digestible for someone. So FDA uses their own proprietary algorithm called Predict that assesses the risk of a facility when they ship to the United States. However, no one knows what their Predict score is. This information is proprietary and given used exclusively by FDA, so nobody has access to that. So at Registrar Corp, we wanted to not, of course, copy the idea, but at least provide a digestive format for this score. And so, for example, in the case of a bad score, we don't typically use the word bad, but we'd like to say a high risk, because we're not making an objective assessment of your company. We're just assessing the risk should an importer try to buy from you. And so a high risk would generally be below a 65. And so when we go below 65, there's a certain point where we cross into a very high risk. And these companies are typically companies that are under a lot of import alerts have not had a lot of shipments that entered the U.S. without issues, or they've had an official action indicated inspection or various compliance events that are serious. Most facilities will typically, if they're doing what they're supposed to and they're FDA compliant, most facilities will typically be in the medium to low risk range. Our next question. Once we register with FDA, is it a block of 1 year or 5 years? And so this is a good question. So I just want to separate the concept of registering with FDA from Registrar Corp service. FDA does require a biennial registration renewal of a food facility. If you are a manufacturer or processor of a drug or a medical device, that is an annual registration. And so during these annual or biennial registration renewal periods, every facility that is registered in any of those industries must re-register with the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. And so Facility 360, we actually are just taking that information that FDA has about your registration and reporting it back to you in a format that's digestible. So when we talk about this concept of 5 years, we are using 5 years as a benchmark to understand the risk that your facility may present to a buyer in the US, where we use that to calculate your Regis Score or to show you your shipments, because we believe 5 years to be a relevant period of time in which compliance events or shipments might occur. Our next question, you mentioned a mandatory renewal between October and December of this year. Should this be done through Registrar Corp or directly through FDA? And so this is a great question. I'm not sure whether you are a current client of ours, but if you are a current Registrar Corp client, you can simply email us and we will get that taken care of for you. If you're not a client of us, we can certainly do the renewal on your behalf. If you're located outside of the United States, the FDA does require any facility that's located outside of the United States to designate a U.S. agent that is located within the United States. And so Registrar Corp serves as the U.S. agent for over 20,000 companies around the world. And so we can serve as your U.S. agent as well as handle your registration renewal on your behalf. Our next question, which is a great question, can a U.S. importer see my score? And so the answer is yes. So a U.S. importer may use the FDA Compliance Monitor or other features of the FDA Compliance Monitor to monitor you as a supplier. And so this information is also given to them, where they can use this to assess the risk of buying from your facility. And so this is not meant to scare you, but rather your U.S. importer within the past several years has had some new requirements given to them, wherein they need to evaluate their supply chain and verify the compliance of their supply chain. And this is supposed to consider things like an import alert, whether the facility has had refusals or whether they've had inspections that had objectionable conditions. So your U.S. importer is taking a lot of things into consideration when they decide to buy from you per requirements that they are required to fulfill under regulations specific to them. So RegiScore is a way for them to kind of receive that information in a high-level format, but they may look deeper to find specific circumstances surrounding the things that influence your RegiScore. And that's why we believe that as the exporter, you would want to know this information as well, so that if a U.S. importer asks you about an import alert that you didn't know about, you actually are prepared to have some knowledge of that import alert and a plan to address it. Our next question, will the system send me an email when a shipment enters the United States? So this is a great question. The system, and this is purely because we don't want any misconceptions here, the system will email you when shipments that have been attributed to your company are published by FDA. So FDA has a database of shipments, and these shipments that you see in the shipment monitoring tool are directly attributed to your facility by FDA. That is the information that Registrar Corp uses to fuel your Regis Score and to report back to you in your shipment monitoring. So it's not an instantaneous alert of a shipment that enters, but rather there is a slight period of latency between when the shipment enters and when it's actually classified and published by FDA. Our next question, my company has been registered since 2019. Is Facility 360 appropriate for us due to the short time of being registered? So this is also a great question. And the large value that we attribute to Facility 360 is the ability to continuously monitor your FDA compliance. So, for example, at any given point, your facility, even if it's brand new, your facility just registered and didn't have a compliance history with FDA. At any given point, something could happen, whether that be a import refusal that causes your products to be put under import alert without your knowledge, etc. So these things can change, and it's important to be armed with that information. So you may not see a lot of data from Facility 360 if you're a relatively new facility, if you haven't been shipping to the US market for a long time. However, that can change, and this tool is designed to help you know about the things that you may not otherwise know about. Okay, we will now take our last question. Our last question is, what is the product code? So FDA uses a standardized set of product codes for each FDA regulated product that ships to the US. So they have all these associations that they've created between product codes and what are called product code descriptions. So in the case of the facility we were looking at earlier, the shiitake mushrooms, there was a very specific type of shiitake mushrooms that had a very specific product code. And this is information that is entered by the filer of the shipment, which is typically the customs broker. And so this is what FDA will interpret the shipment as when it enters the United States. Okay, so we are out of time, but we encourage you to send any additional questions you may have to us by email. The email that you can see is up on top of the screen at info@registrarcorp.com. If you would like some support in your locality or even in your language, we have 19 offices worldwide that you can view at the address listed there, registrarcorp.com/offices. This concludes our presentation, and I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today.